Hey, former council member Allan, Domb, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Larry and Denise. Thanks. It's nice to be here.
So the first big question we're going to ask you is, upon being elected, what are you going to do about poverty?
Well, look, the single best way for us to reduce poverty in Philadelphia, has some of the highest poverty of any city, is to get more people working at higher wages. That is the goal. You know, other candidates are proposing programs and policies that seem designed only to make people comfortable living in poverty. My goal will be to take people out of poverty. You know, that's really going to be my focus. I proposed a bold vision for the city over the next 10 years that have us creating 100,000 good paying new jobs in the next 10 years, bringing in 100,000 new residents in the next 10 years, and taking 100,000 people out of poverty in the next decade. And I'm focused on really helping people build careers and becoming entrepreneurs and owners, because that's the best way really in the long run to create generational wealth. It's really important that we increase entrepreneurship. You know, in the Black and brown community, entrepreneurs consist of 2 to 3%. It should be 15 to 20%. You know, it's really a key to generate wealth in our community. And so we should really be focused, though, in order to accomplish this, on three things. Number one, and most importantly, is education. That is the key. And you've heard me talk about this before, but I will put in place the mandatory teaching of kindergarten to 12th grade of financial literacy, technology, and entrepreneurship, all three. And then I'll allow students in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade to go to school 4 days a week, and on the 5th day, work in a job, get credit, get paid, get a summer job. And in this environment with a labor shortage that we have, most employers will say, hey, Allan, I know you're working on Monday. Can you come in Tuesday through Friday from 3:30 to 6 after school and work? So our kids will graduate with 4 different job experiences. We'll get them off the street. We'll have them productive. They'll be in a great situation with mentoring with other people. And look, we know this works. There's a high school called Cristo Rey. It is at 17th and Allegheny. I love Cristo Rey. There are 17 Cristo Reys in the United States. It means Christ is King. This school is mainly made up of students who had unfortunate situations, a lot of violence in their family. Many don't have dads. Some don't have any moms. Many live with grandparents or aunts and uncles. Many have lost siblings to the violence in the city. Yet they go to school 4 days a week. They work 1 day a week in a job. Last year, they graduated 99% of their students, and 100% went on to college. Now that's a system that works. What I want to do is copy success. And look, from my own perspective, I grew up pretty modestly. You know, I was 5 years old. I was out shining shoes with my brother, who was 9, at 5:30 to 7:30 in the morning before school. When I was 11, I had 2 paper routes, 5:30 in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon after school. I went to public school. I was a wrestler. And after a wrestling practice at 6 o'clock, I also worked. In 10th grade, actually, I was a janitor from 6:30 to 10:30 at night, 4 nights a week. Back then, the minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. Did that for a while, then went to Howard Johnson's and became a dishwasher at $1.65. The value of work is important. So the education is key, but I want to take it a step further. I think we need to really focus on job training and job career training for our high school students. For example, we have a shortage today of police officers and firefighters and EMT. We should take 2 high schools and have them become our public safety high schools, 2 existing schools, reprogram them, where we have 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders learning to be police officers, learning to be firefighters, and learning to go into EMT. It's so important. And in the 12th grade, when the firefighters and EMT graduate, they can get a job. Police officers have to be 20, but they can become cadets at 18 and 19 and do some of the desk jobs and intern in the police department. Police Commissioner Outlaw was a cadet. So was former Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey. He was a cadet. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to grow our own. Think of it this way: the Philadelphia Phillies, they have 3 minor league teams, AAA, AA, and single A ball. They have minor league teams so they can train their players for the majors. We should be using our high schools for the training ground for the majors, which are these jobs. But I will take it a step further. We should engage 3, 4, or more high schools and cooperate in conjunction with the building trades And we should have high schools that are dedicated for the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade to teach our students and our residents how to be sheet metal workers, how to be plumbers, how to be steam fitters, how to be carpenters or electricians from 9th to 12th grade, 4 years. We should engage some of the retired people from the building trades. And these people have been doing this work for a long time. They have tremendous institutional knowledge. We should have them teach with our teachers in high school with one guarantee for the building trades. After you complete a 4-year program in 12th grade, we guarantee them a job that pays 60 or 65,000. That would be a game changer for taking people out of poverty, a game changer. It's take it a step further. We have a lot of vacancies in licensing and inspection. We should have programs in our high school for that. We need appraisers. We need teachers. You can't become a teacher just by graduating high school, but we could have a track that gets them advanced so they can go into college with some knowledge about becoming a teacher. In other words, what I'm really saying is let's take our high schools and figure out what job opportunities are available and then make sure we can get our residents of the city on those tracks for these good paying jobs. Look, college isn't for everyone, it's for many. But when you graduate college today, you could have $50,000 to $250,000 of debt, and you could start with a job that's $50,000. When I'm talking about jobs that are paying 60 and 65 and 70 with no debt. Let me take it a step further on the poverty. Besides teaching our young people, I believe we need to take 25 locations across the city in our neighborhoods and use our churches, schools, and rec centers and offer adult education from either 6 to 8 at night or 7 to 9, where we teach adults a couple things. One, we teach financial literacy. We teach home ownership, and I'm going to come back to that. We teach technology, and we teach entrepreneurship. And I'm going back to home ownership because we need to teach it not just to the adults, but also to our kids in school. Home ownership is key. The average wealth of a tenant is $4,000 to $6,000. The average wealth of a homeowner is $200,000. We need to teach home ownership. That is one of the biggest keys to generational wealth. So those are two of the target points we need to focus on. And the last one is we need to have access for capital. For small businesses, they need access to grow, whether it's banks or CDFIs or a program like the Enterprise Fund has, which is Della Clark, the Innovate Capital Fund. We need to make sure that those small businesses and medium-sized businesses have the ability to grow. It's very important. And so that's kind of the overview of how to take people out of poverty. Won't happen overnight, but if we had done this 10 years ago, we'd have a different city today.
Hey, Denise, you want to get started?
Sure. Well, thank you. And I always get confused. I can't call you Council Member Domb anymore.
Just call me
I
out.
just want to call you Allan.
That's fine.
But I guess my first question for you is, and this is kind of where my brain went. Traditionally, we have had issues with the unions being more integrated for people of color to actually be able to join the unions. But a part of what you want to do about poverty includes in connecting unions with high school students. How are you going to make that happen? Have you thought about how you make that happen?
So, I've already talked to several of the unions, bricklayers and others about this idea, sheet metal workers. They're excited about it. They're actually excited about it. They want to they want to participate, they want to cooperate. Look, one of the benefits I can bring to the table as the next mayor is I think for sure I can unleash the biggest economic boom the city's ever seen. I know how to do that, whether it's covering Vine Street from the Ben Franklin Parkway to the bridge, that whole area of Vine Street where we cover it, where we connect Chinatown and capture some of that other land for either parks or development. That's a huge construction job, whether we include building the subway up on Roosevelt Boulevard or extending the subway down to the Navy Yard, where we're going to have more residential at the Navy Yard. These are big economic projects for the city that will put more demand for workers. And I've always heard from the unions that we don't have a trained ability, we don't have the training of our people in the city to take on these union jobs. So what I'm saying is let's step back from that. Let's spend 4 years and train our people for the skill set to take on these union jobs with the guarantee from the union that once they go through the 4 years, they'll be guaranteed to be hired in these jobs. And so I don't feel like we're expanding our economy. We're creating more opportunities and more jobs. And we will need more people because we're going to have a big economic boom. It's not just on those 3 projects. Across the city, we have commercial corridors that need to be renovated and downsized probably. We have some corridors that are 4 or 5 blocks long, commercial corridors that are 20, 30, or 40 or 50 years old. Just think about this for a moment. Germantown Avenue below Erie, where Max's Steaks is. When I walked there on a Saturday recently at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 80% of the stores were closed because there's less demand for a lot of the goods and services that those stores provided 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, because you have the internet today. So we have to reimagine these commercial corridors. Might have to shrink them, might have to make some more residential. We have to fix them up. We have to green them and get them safer. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity for us to clean up the neighborhoods of the city through the commercial corridors. And I think what that does, it creates more opportunity across the board for more skilled workers. And in the schools that I'm talking about for the building trades, I don't want to just teach them how to be a carpenter or how to be an electrician. I also want to teach them the entrepreneurial side, which is how to own your own company that provides carpentry and electrical work. So that's part of it also.
Okay. Now, one of the things that has made poverty an issue here is the topic of housing. Most importantly, housing that people can afford to live in. As someone who started out as a developer, here in the city, a lot of people are going to hear you talk about dealing with homes and our affordable housing crisis, and they're not necessarily going to think that you may be the best person for that job. What do you say to them in terms of, because automatically they're going to view you as a developer and wonder whether or not a developer should be in charge of dealing with our affordable housing issues?
It's funny that people say that because my whole career has been a real estate broker. I started in 1980 as a real estate broker. For the first 20 years, I didn't do one development. And then after that, in 1999, I maybe have done 7 or 8 buildings in total. And they were all older buildings, like built in the 1920s, that I brought back to life. But the majority of my work has been in the brokerage business, helping people buy and sell their homes and helping people get into homes. Very little of it was in the development end. Really, my business was in the brokerage. I know that people say that I'm a developer, but most of my activity was in the brokerage end. In fact, let me give you an example of affordable housing. These are just the facts. Of the top 50 cities in the country, Philadelphia has some of the most affordable housing, most affordable. But of the top 50 cities in the country, we have some of the lowest average income. So the question is, do we have a housing problem here, or do we have an income problem? Well, right now we have both. But really, if we could get our incomes up and get better paying jobs, those houses become a lot more affordable. And that will be my goal. Look, in the short term, we do have 40,000 lots in the city that the city owns and 8,000 buildings. I believe we can leverage those for affordable housing through nonprofits and private development, because by 2030, we will need 30,000 additional units of affordable housing. But I think in the long term, the goal has to be getting better income in these jobs. From 2009 to 2018, all jobs created in the United States that paid less than $35,000, the percentage was 29%. Yet in Philadelphia, all jobs created that paid less than $35,000 in that same time period, our percentage was 60.5, double, more than double the average. Okay, more than double. Now that's a failure in my book.
That's ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Here's the problem, though, Denise. The jobs that pay $35,000 to $100,000, we are less than half of our suburban counterparts, like Conshohocken, like Devon, Valley Forge, and Malvern, and King of Prussia. Go out there. Go look at King of Prussia. Go look at Conshohocken. It's like a new city has sprouted up. And that is because of our taxation policies. And then when you look even further, of the top 20 employers in the city of Philadelphia, top 20 employers, only 3 are private sector: Comcast, Thank God they're here. American Airlines, because the airport is here. And the third largest employer in the city of Philadelphia out of 20 is Allied Security. Think about that, because of the amount of guard services they provide. That's not exactly a positive for the city that our third largest employer is a security service company. That speaks volumes about how we have to get the public safety under control, which we haven't talked about, but that is the number one issue, public safety right now. That's the number one issue. But getting back to what I'm talking about, here's why we have not been performing well on job creation that over 35,000. You're an entrepreneur in New York City, the local and state business taxes combined are 16.2. If you're a small business in Philadelphia, or medium or large business, the taxation policy after it's been reduced slightly, but with my net income tax bill is 15.9. They're 16.2, we're 15.9. The third highest in the United States is California, and they are at 8.8. We're 15.9. Boston and Chicago are 7, and we are 15.9. Atlanta is 4. We're 15.9. Forget Texas and Florida. Tell me, if you're a small business, are you going to grow here? Or are you going to come here? Or like, look at Minneapolis. They have 28 corporate headquarters. Look what we have, Comcast. Our tax structure has to change. And it is the net income of the business taxes that is creating this problem of us not being able to attract employers with good paying jobs that take people out of poverty. And that's why we're producing poverty level jobs at twice the rate of everyone else. That has to be adjusted. That is a problem.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to give you back to Larry, and you're listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5.
You know, Denise, I should mention one other thing. eConsult, when I was in council, did a study showing that if we took that net income down to 0 over 10 years, there was the potential to create 100,000 good paying jobs over the next 10 years. One of the biggest economic booms the city would see. To me, that is totally worthwhile because they're good paying jobs.
Okay.
Great. Well, so let's stay on taxes for a second. When we look at the city's revenues, wage taxes is the number one source of revenue. Then it's the business tax. I think there are 6 taxes that are like 99% of the revenue for the city. If we start bringing down business tax, wage tax, which you didn't mention here, but let's just say business tax, how do you replace that revenue? Because even though right now we're at a surplus, first time we've had a budget over $6 billion, that's not always going to be the case. So where does that revenue come from?
So let's just look at this really carefully. 8 years ago, the budget was $4 billion. Today it's $6 billion. The budget went up 50%, double, on a 50% increase, not double, but a 50% increase in 8 years. $2 billion increase, $2 billion. You're talking about a bird tax that if you phase it out over 10 years, can probably be replaced with the creation of all the new jobs we're going to get by having businesses expand here and come here. So I don't see this as a difficult problem to solve. This is will be, if we can lower that net income, the additional revenue we'll get from the new jobs will more than pay for it. In fact, I think over a 10-year period, it can almost be a balancing of the revenue we might lose, the increased 100,000 new jobs. Think about that. The wage taxes and all the other taxes that it generates more than pays for the loss of the business taxes. I think it could become revenue neutral over a 10 or 15-year period and then start growing. But it's an investment. It's an investment in the tax structure to attract quality businesses here and help existing ones expand. Look, at the end of the day, if we don't have more employment in the city's at a crossroads. The city's at 1991. This next election is a crossroads election in which direction we're going to go in. We have a choice. We can either go in the direction of creating more employment and more opportunity and more good paying jobs, or we can continue down the same path we've been on, which is a loss of population, a loss of employment. Look at all the companies who've moved out of the city. Look at them all. There's a ton of them, whether it's Radian or Glaxo or SmithKline or Mothers Works. I could go through the list. We've lost them. Look at other cities who've attracted them. We need to figure out how to be attractive to employers so they come here. You know, I love Comcast, and I'll tell you why. They employ 11,500 people in this city, but they have an economic job multiplier of 4 to 1. For every job they create at Comcast, there's 4 more jobs that are created in this city. They're responsible for probably over 50,000 jobs. What we need are 10 more Comcasts or 5 more Comcasts. That's what we need. But the next mayor, hopefully I will be the next mayor, will be the best salesperson for the city in helping existing businesses stay here and attracting new ones to come here. I can tell you right now, if there's 28 corporations in Minneapolis, I'm reaching out to each and every one of them and seeing how we can get them to open an office here. I'll also be focused on getting Vanguard to open in a larger scale than they have in the city. You know, Fidelity is in Boston downtown. Vanguard is out in the suburbs. Vanguard should have a much bigger presence in the city, because the one thing that we offer is that we offer talent. We have people who are living here who are very talented. And we also offer the arts and culture and the best restaurants and a lifestyle that no suburb can compete with. And I always say this, Denise and Larry, the suburban people, we all work together, but the suburban people have to realize that they are a sub of the urb. We are the urb. All the fun occurs in the urb, and we need their support and they need our support. But we need to do this together. And I think we can.
Now, you had mentioned getting 100,000 people out of poverty, which would be about a quarter of the people living in poverty in Philadelphia, because we're about 400,000 right now. That is the same number as the Poverty Action Plan, which you were intimately involved with as a co-chair. Are there elements of that plan that you are looking to implement in your term?
Well, first of all, it's not as my plan is probably more aggressive than that plan. And my plan is really all about education. Think about it. Teaching financial literacy, teaching tech, teaching entrepreneurship. We need to expand entrepreneurship. We need to get more entrepreneurs into the city. Adult education for financial literacy, home ownership and entrepreneurship, and technology. That plan did not cover that. Also access to capital, with whether it's CDFIs or banks, or maybe we should even look at our pension fund and invest some of our pension money into the Innovate Capital program that Della Clark has. Because what's a better investment than investing in the businesses of our city? Because when we invest in the business of our city, not only will we get a return on the investment, we'll get a tremendous return on the expansion of the jobs and the taxes those businesses will pay us. It's actually always, my golden rule is always invest in yourself. Here we have a city of Philadelphia with a pension fund. We should be investing in businesses in the city to get the good returns, not just on the return on the money, but the return on all the taxes and growth that will benefit the city.
Mm-hmm. That's something I've been screaming about for years. That's a really good idea. All right, so let's fast forward a little bit. It's January 2024, a cold day, probably, hopefully. And it's your first week in office. What are the first steps you're taking to eliminate poverty or alleviate poverty in the city?
Well, let me just be clear. None of this, we can't do any of these things if we don't get the crime under control. The number one issue for us today is we have a public safety crisis. We've talked about a good paying jobs crisis. We've talked about affordable housing crisis. We have a poverty crisis and an education crisis. The first day, the biggest crisis we have, which I think I can fix the first day, is a crisis of leadership. That's the biggest crisis, leadership. So on day one, I will declare a crime emergency in the city. I will declare a public health emergency in Kensington. I will put in place my 10-point comprehensive public safety plan that's on my website, votedomb.com. And it starts with taking the most violent people, 1,700 to 1,800 people on our streets off the street. They're committing majority of the crime, whether it's gangs, drug related, or retaliation. And then my plan has been reviewed by past police commissioners. So I've gotten a lot of input from really smart people. Also includes prosecuting retail theft. It also includes prosecuting illegal gun violations. People who have guns that don't have a license or have done stuff illegally with their guns. We have to prosecute that stuff. The shooter in Roxborough, that 14-year-old young man, that group had several illegal gun violations against them. They had murdered someone the day before. He was out on drunk driving, on bail for drunk driving, and hitting a pregnant woman and killed her baby. I mean, why was that person on the street? We need more accountability. So day one, those are some of the things I would do. I'd also put in place on day one a public safety cabinet. where I would conduct the meetings myself, consisting of the police commissioner, the DA, US Attorney, Attorney General's office, FBI, ATF, courts, PATCO and SEPTA security, EDS and Med security. I will conduct weekly meetings, whether they're an hour or 6 hours every week, with specific goals and tactics and to reach those goals. Because that's the most important thing right now. If people don't feel safe going to school, with sending their kids to school, or going to work, or going out to eat or shopping in the evening, we have a real problem. You know, Denise and Larry, last year, 2022, 52% of the people in the city in a poll stated they have thought about moving. That's devastating. That is devastating. We have to turn that around. And they all thought about moving for a major reason, which is the public safety. Now, last year we did lose 30,000 people, half because of the violence and half because of public safety. So education is also a key factor here, but public safety is the #1 issue right now.
Right, former Councilmember Allan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
having me. Thank you both.